Kendall's
Metal Shop.
This week on Charlie Kendall's Metal Shop, it's all about Black Sabbath. We'll focus on the formation and first success of the band by taking a deep dive into their releases from 1970 to 1978. We'll hear from Ozzy, Tony, and Geezer themselves along the way. You don't want to miss a minute of this special broadcast.
Hello, this is Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath, and I'll be this week's feature interview on Metalshop.
I'm Charlie Kendall, and our focus this week is on the early years of the original heavy metal band. These Birmingham lads were formed from the ashes of the Polka Tulk Blues Band and Earth. Originally a sextet, the group slimmed down to its core four by 1969 and settled on the name Black Sabbath. Distinguished by their occult themes with horror-inspired lyrics and tuned-down guitars, they signed to Philips Records in November of 1969 and released their first single, Evil Woman, originally recorded by Minnesota band Crow in January of 1970. Here's Ozzy Osbourne and Tony Iommi to talk a bit about those early years.
Ozzy used to be at the same school as me. He was in a year younger than me. We never really associated at school because, you know, that you'd always sort of knock about with a couple of your own friends out the same year. So he was in a different year, so we never sort of associated with him. And when I was in a band with Bill Ward up in Carlisle, with Mythology, when we broke up, we came back to Birmingham, and we decided that we wanted to stick together and form a band. And one day, we went into the music shop in Birmingham, and there was an advert saying, Ozzy Zig requires gig. And I said to Bill, I know an Ozzy, but it can't be him. He can't sing. I didn't even think he could sing or anything, you know. I'd never heard him. So anyway, sure enough, we go round to his house, followed the advert, knocked on the door. His mum came to the door, and we said, we'll come about the advert, and she said, oh, John, it's for you. So he come up, and I'm seeing him walk up the hall. I said to Bill, forget it. And he went, why? What? I'll tell you later. So anyway, we talked to him for a bit, and then we left and never made any decisions or anything. And then 2 days later, Ozzy came round to my house, because I lived not that far from where he lived, because we all lived in the same sort of area. So he came round with Geezer to my house, and we had a shop. My mother and father had a shop at that point. And so they came round and said, do you know any drummers? God, I said, well, yeah, and Bill was a drummer, and Bill said, I'm not doing anything. He said, oh unless we all go together. I said, we're sticking together. So we decided to get together and give it a go. And what a row it was. I mean, it was absolutely horrible.
Tony and Bill had a band called Mythology up north in a place called Carlisle, which is on the Scottish border. And their bass player and their singer had just left. I was with Geezer, and they went into the music shop, saw the advert, and I'd called myself Ozzy Zig. But to get someone like, I thought the word Zig was like would capture somebody's eye, you know. And then Tony and Bill came round in this van, and originally we had me singing, Tony playing guitar, Bill playing drums, Geezer playing bass. We had a guy called Jimmy Phillips playing bottleneck guitar, and a guy called Clark, I think, playing sax. We were a six-piece. Originally we went out, we just should think of any name, you know, for the night, you know. But then they took the saxophone player and the bottleneck guitar player went, and then we went out as Earth. And then we started writing. Tony was the guy who said, why don't we start writing scary music?
Away.
Black Sabbath and their first single, Evil Woman. A month later, the full-length album was unleashed on an unsuspecting public. As Tony tells it, the band had only 2 days to record and mix that first album. In fact, the band weren't even a part of the mixing process. Tony?
We had 2 days, and one day was for recording, the second day was for the mixing, which we weren't involved with, incidentally. We were there for the recording, and then we had to go to leave to get the boat to go to Europe, because we got some shows. We were playing in this place for like 3 weeks in a bar there in Switzerland, and then we'd go off to Germany and play at the Star Club and in that time the album had come out, and we're coming back on the boat, and then we're driving from London then back home when the top 20 came on, and they announced our album in the top 20, and we couldn't believe it. It was just like, wow.
We recorded our first album in 12 hours on the way to the ferry to go to do a residency at the Star Club in Hamburg. And so we got the van, pulled up to a place called Regent's Sounds, where and I was kind of freaked out, because I know that Paul McCartney recorded Fixing a Hole on the Sgt. Pepper album in his very studio. And I was like, where did he stand? Where did he take a piss? And we did it was a really crappy studio, like 2 4-track machine. We got and we all thought that's what everybody does to make a record. And I was saying, well, how do the Beatles sound so great if all you got to do is set your gear up, play, and get in the van? And yet their albums sound so wonderful, I didn't realise that all this stuff's added to it.
Those things you
Black Sabbath and the track NIB from their debut album. I'm Charlie Kendall, and this week on Metal Shop, we're focusing on Black Sabbath's early years. Later in 1970, the band released its second LP, Paranoid, widely regarded as heavy metal's most influential album of all time. Elements of progressive rock, jazz, blues, and of course, that unique Sabbath sound were all prevalent on this release. Iron Man, War Pigs, Fairies Wear Boots would all become signature tracks for the group. With sustained popularity in their home country, it was time to infiltrate the United States. Here's Tony and Ozzy talking about their gigs in the Big Apple.
The first time we ever came here, we were so excited about coming, and we were so green, we didn't know what to expect or what to do. So we had our own PA system, and of course our PA went onto the plane with no casing or anything. We didn't know anything about that. It went on the plane with a plastic cover on. The amps went on with plastic covers on. When we got to New York, there we are watching them come down the thing. Of course, we got to the first place we were playing at, which was a place called Ungano's Club in New York. And it was a really tiny place and a bit of a dump, really. And that was our first experience of playing in New York. We went, "Did you see it?" And it was. We played 2 nights at this Ungano's Club. And then the next night was the third time we played in New York was the Fillmore. And God, that's when it started with bloody hell, everything. It was brilliant. And we were doing we were playing with Rod Stewart. Funny combination now, but and it went down really great.
So the next minute I know I'm in a club one night, and the manager Jim Simpson comes up to me, and then he goes, "Your album's just gone in the British chart at number 14. I said, "Yeah, pull the other one, you know." And he says, "No." He stayed in the British charts in the top 10 for 2 years. Then Paranoid came out, and that was even like a bit. And every English band's dream was to come to the US, you know. We came to America, and we were instantly a success. And it's just, I'm looking back, it was like one incredible adventure. My life has been one incredible adventure. From being one level in life, going back, to then all of a sudden having a car, having a flying first class, doing all this exciting stuff. And I mean, it was just like a dream come true. Well, it was a dream come true, you know.
Black Sabbath and Fairies Wear Boots from 1970's Paranoid. When we return, we'll take a listen to Master of Reality and Volume 4. Don't touch that dial. There's more of the Devil's Interval yet to come.
Headbangers, this is Bill Ward. Don't go away, because I'll be back with more Metal Shop right after these words.
All right, we got a special Metal Shop concert review from Brian Richards, the guy who runs the Metal Shop fan page. Here's his thoughts on ZZ Top at a recent show in Minnesota.
Hey Charlie, Brian Richards here with my review of the ZZ Top concert at the Ledge Amphitheater on Thursday, June 12th, 2025. The band hit the stage at approximately 8:45 p.m. with Got Me Under Pressure and powered their way through a 1 hour 15-minute set as a steady rain fell throughout the night. Since the Ledge is an outdoor venue, you can expect unpredictable weather occasionally, and Thursday night was no exception, but that didn't dampen the spirits of the sold-out crowd of 5,000 plus as the band stormed through a set of classics including LaGrange, Tube Snake Boogie, and Sharp Dressed Man, sounding revitalized by the return of Frank Beard on the Skins after a brief illness. Be sure to catch them when they are in your area. Thanks for keeping rock alive.
Metal Shop.
Charlie Kendall's Metal Shop.
Welcome back, I'm Charlie Kendall, and this is the first of a multi-part special on heavy metal's forefathers, Black Sabbath. For their third album, Master of Reality, released in 1971, Tony Iommi decided to tune down his guitar 3 semitones to create a heavier and darker sound, as well as to ease the tension on his fingers, which were injured in an industrial accident. The result was more hard-hitting riffs and grooves on the first side of the LP. For side 2, the band went a bit more acoustic and experimental than their previous outings. Here's Geezer Butler to discuss why they needed to change things up to survive.
I think if we'd have just stayed at that time a hard rock band, we'd have just filtered out after the third album. Just after the third album, which I thought was the heaviest Master of Reality. That was like our heaviest album. And we just didn't want to do it again on the fourth album. That's when we started getting into pianos and strings and mellotrons and all that sort of stuff.
Black Sabbath and the Children of the Grave from their third LP, Master of Reality. You're listening to Metal Shop's multi-part special on the history of Black Sabbath. For their next album, Volume 4, released in 1974, the band ended up producing the entire affair by themselves. Fueled by speaker boxes full of cocaine, the band experimented even more with the heavy sound they had become known for. Tracks like Tomorrow's Dream, Supernaut, Snowblind, and Changes all appear on this classic slab of vinyl. Here's Ozzy talking about the substance abuse that escalated during that period and the environment described as a living hell during those tours.
Sabbath was like, one would fly, one would drive, one would get on a motorcycle, and you'd eventually get there with a bit of luck, you know. Sabbath was the most unorganised situation I've ever had the unfortunate displeasure of working with. They were just ridiculous. One was stoned from the night before, one was drunk from the night before. I was probably lining up about 9 million cans of beer on the floor. You know, it just never works. How we survived for all those years, God only knows, you know.
Probably around 76, 77, we started getting totally wasted in the studio. I think Sabotage took us 10 months to record, and it's just getting ridiculous. When we go and we like cogs out of our heads and put down what we thought was an incredible album track and work on it stay up for about 3 or 4 days just working on it. And you'd have a day off and come in, it'd be absolutely junk. Then we started realising that the coke was taken over, and that's when we started getting off it.
What you get and what you see, things that don't come
I am the Butcher Charlie Kendall, and that was Black Sabbath and Snowblind. When we come back, we'll jump to the releases Sabbath Bloody Sabbath and Sabotage, respectively. The Metal Shop Black Sabbath blowout continues right after this.
Hi, Headbangers, this is Ozzy Osbourne. Don't go away, because we'll be coming back with more Metal Shop right after these words.
I'm Metal Tim from Bravewords.com, and here are your metal notes this week on Metal Shop. We lost Pantera drum legend Vinnie Paul 7 years ago this week. Aerosmith's drummer Joey Kramer turns 75 and Kip Winger turns 64. Scorpions Worldwide Live and Motley Crue's Theater of Pain both turned 40. And Tony Iommi, Ronnie James Dio, Geezer Butler, and Vinny Appice reunited for Black Sabbath Dehumanizer 33 years ago. At a high court in the UK, Venom singer Kronos has claimed copyright over the band's satanic designs. He says, "You have the Kiss Army. I thought it would be cool to have the Venom Legions." And the reunited Sabotage hit the road in Europe last week and are expected to announce North American dates very soon. Sabotage 2025 features Johnny Lee Middleton on bass, Chris Caffery and Al Petrelli on guitar, Zach Stevens on lead vocals, and Jeff Plate on drums. And those are your metal notes this week on Metal Shop, brought to you by Bravewords.com.
Charlie Kendall's Metal Shop.
Welcome back, I'm Charlie Kendall, and this is part one of our deep dive into the history of Black Sabbath. Following the success of Volume 4 and the desire to create the same type of atmosphere for their follow-up, the band rented a house in Bel Air and booked time at LA's Record Plant Studios. However, drug use continued to escalate to the point that Tony Iommi collapsed after their performance at the Hollywood Bowl. It was decided that Sabbath needed to take some time off to recover. With no luck writing new material, the group reconvened to the UK at Clearwell Castle, located in the Forest of Dean in Gloucestershire, England. Here Tony talks about the writer's block that plagued him at that time.
After Volume 4, we rented the same house again and went back to the house to record, which turned out to be Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. But we got there, and the studio we were using, the record plant, Stevie Wonder had built a bloody giant Moog in there, so we couldn't use that. We couldn't go to that one. So it all went a bit pear-shaped, really. And to top it all, I couldn't think of anything, because it was always me that come up with the initial stuff, and then they'd go, "Oh, I like that," and then we'd make it into a song. For some reason, I couldn't think of anything. And I got really more nervous and worried about it, and worse it got. And so we decided, that's it, we've got to leave it and let's go back to England, have a break, and then try it again. So we went back and we had a break for a couple of weeks. And then we rented a castle in Wales called Clearwell Castle. And we set the gear up in the dungeons there as a bit of vibe, so I get a bit of vibe there. And the first thing I came up with was Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, and again, that was the benchmark for that album. So we'd done that, and it was working again, but it was frightening at first when I had that.
The race is wrong, the book
Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, the title track from Black Sabbath's fifth album, released in 1973. I'm Charlie Kendall, and you're listening to the history of Black Sabbath on this week's Metal Shop. In 1975, the band released album number 6, and Sabotage. So named because the band was being sued by their former management at the time, and according to Iommi, that the group felt that they were sabotaged all the way along the line and getting punched from all sides. As an album, Sabotage is a mix of heavy, powerful songs and softer experimental fare. Classics like Symptom of the Universe, Am I Going Insane, and the deep track, The Writ, penned by Ozzy Osbourne, are all included. Along with this fist pumper, Hole in the Sky. From 1975, Sabotage, that's Black Sabbath, and Hole in the Sky. When we return, we'll wrap up this part of our study on the first heavy metal band with a look at 1976's Technical Ecstasy and 1978's Never Say Die. Hold on, we'll be right back.
Metal Shop.
Bravewords Bravewords Records, home for Paul Di'Anno's Warhorse, The Chris Slade Timeline, Rhett Forrester and Rob Robbins, Prophets of Addiction, Jack Starr, Aska, Crimson Glory, and Lillian Axe, where music lives. Bravewords Records. Visit bravewordsrecords.com.
Charlie Kendall's Metal Shop.
After some more internal strife, drug use, and Ozzy leaving the band after the Technical Ecstasy tour, the band forged on with Savoy Brown vocalist Dave Walker for a brief time in 1977. Ozzy returned in 1978, in time to record what would be the original foursome's last studio album together, Never Say Die. With Ozzy refusing to record any songs that Walker penned with the band, one track was sung by Bill Ward, Swingin' the Chain. One remained an instrumental track, Breakout, and another was rewritten entirely, Junior's Eyes. Constant bickering over song lyrics between Geezer Butler and Ozzy Osbourne led the album down a path to complete disaster. To this day, Butler despises this release. He tells us why.
Yeah, it's just like the end. We all knew that it wasn't happening anymore. And just nobody was really into it. We slipped back into the old drugs again and it just didn't help anything. We just sort of lost interest by them. All the management hassles and record company disinterest, and grew a bit jaded of the whole thing.
Searching for a reason.
If you want to write to us, it's metalshop@charliekendall.com. That's metalshop@charliekendall.com. This episode of Charlie Kendall's Metal Shop was produced by Corey Harker. Confidant to the stars, Chris Aiken. I am the Butcher Charlie Kendall. Be here next week for
Metal Shop.
the only show with teeth.